10 years ago, I made a silent promise to myself that if I wasn't healed by the time I was 50, I would end everything. And when that day came, I kept my vow, but not in the way you might think and not in the way I originally thought. And so today, I'm going to tell you the story. And so, quickly, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself. And on the day I turned 50, I finally fulfilled the most important vow, promise that I ever made to myself. I literally ended it all. And fortunately, it wasn't in death, it was in identity. And this video today is probably one of the most important videos I will ever make because it is about the vow that I carried in silence for so many years. And today I want to talk about the road and the journey I've been down to get here. And so, if you've ever suffered with chronic illness, chronic pain, chronic suffering, mental, emotional, physical, of any kind, and if you've ever wanted to end that pain, then this video is for you. Because the truth is, I didn't need to actually literally end it all in the way that you thought. But I did need to end it all in a completely different way. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. And hopefully by the end of this video, it will give you hope and it will give you an understanding of how you can end your suffering and pain too. So I don't have to tell you, if you're on this channel, that suffering day in and day out from a physical, emotional, debilitating chronic illness is unthinkable, unspeakable. For me, the road, and I'm not going to go over my entire story, but for me, the road was long, arduous. There really are no human words. I wouldn't do that story justice at this point if I told it. But if you've walked it, you know, you understand. And when I say horrific, I mean that in every literal and metaphysical sense of the word. And when I say that there's no human words to really describe suffering, pain, um, this isn't something that I'm just saying. This is something, unfortunately, that I lived. And 3 years into my illness, 3 years into the suffering, when I saw no way out, there were no breaks. It was 24/7, millisecond by millisecond. And I had already held on about as long as a person could possibly hold on. I wanted to end things, but I knew I never would. It was at that point that I drew a line in the sand and said, I made two promises to myself that day. And the first one was that I would never actually go through with ending it, no matter what happened, that I would hold on so that I could see if there was healing and something on the other side, and that I would never actually succumb. I drew the line in the sand that day. I also drew another line in the sand that said I would never, ever allow my children to be affected by this, that I would do anything and everything that I could to protect them, keep them safe, and keep them healthy, and keep them from knowing, about my suffering. And so I drew those two lines in the sand, but I gave myself an out that I never told anybody. And those were vows that I intended to keep for the rest of my life. But 10 years ago, I was just turning 40 when I made those vows. And it had already been over three long years at that point, with no sign of relief in sight at all. And so I made a secret vow to myself, like an out. It was an out. And it said, you'll keep these two vows, these two lines in the sand that you have drawn. But if and when you turn 50, you're still suffering, then I give you permission to go ahead and do it, to go ahead and make a new vow that says you're now allowed to end it. You've given it all that you can over the last decade, and now you're free to end the suffering. So that was a vow that I never uttered out loud, and I never even really uttered it to myself. It was a very subconscious, in the back of my mind, loophole that I drew into that contract for myself because I needed some faraway, distant endpoint to the suffering and pain in order to help me live day to day through what I thought would never end. But yeah, I made the vow that I would never end it. So I knew I never would, but I still had this like small loophole in my mind that if you get to 50 and it's still the same thing, I will give you permission. So there was like a silent, very silent deadline that I had that said 50's it. Like, you don't have to do this any longer than that, but you have to do it full out until then. And I did. I survived the emotional, mental, and physical grueling suffering that I endured. Along the way, I fell apart, I got back up, I fell apart, I got back up, I bargained with God, I prayed, I begged, I pleaded, I did all of the things. I eventually let go of all of that, stepped into my full healing power, did all the work a person could possibly do in order to heal. And it was still a very long struggle, a very long journey. I probably started to turn the corner at 6 to 7 years in. I really made some significant improvements and really turned things around. After I was able to turn the corner, my progress went a lot faster. The first, 6 years, there was no movement, nothing. After I was able to turn a healing corner, my healing really went faster. In comparison, it was still long, it was still slow, but in comparison, it moved so much faster that within 3 years of turning that corner, I considered myself, 80 to 85% healed and fully functional again in life. And unfortunately, I have had since that date 4 major setbacks that really set back the healing journey in a significant and profound way, in which I almost had to start from scratch. So even though I had been healed for the last 2 to 3 years of this journey, I would say 90 to 95%, and fully living my life in every single way possible where you really truly are healed. 6 months ago, I had a setback that rocked my world. And it was 6 months before I was set to turn 50. I was right back in the quicksand of second to second suffering, which I couldn't understand, couldn't fathom, and just couldn't believe that I was back here. I simply couldn't believe it. And that's when I remembered this looming deadline. That's when I had thought back. That's when I had remembered the entire journey that I had walked and this loophole date that I had given myself to get out of it. But I knew after everything I'd been through that that person was no longer me anymore, that there was no way that I could actually end it, even if I was in a setback of suffering and I had to go through the entire thing again. I knew that I absolutely no longer wanted or needed a loophole, that was simply not an option for me. But I knew that something did need to die. I knew that I couldn't take one more step further when I turned 50, that I could no longer be the person, even the healed version of myself who had gotten me this far, even the version of myself who had come out of it, who had healed, who had stood up, who had taken back her power, who had healed the trauma, who had healed the pain and suffering in all of these different beautiful ways, I could no longer even be that version of myself. That I could no longer take one more step connected in any way to chronic illness, connected to any way in the identity of the person who had gotten me, who had lived through that. I couldn't take her beyond my birthday of 50 years, that I wouldn't take her beyond, that I would keep the vow to myself and end her, end that version of myself. I knew that I needed to die and be reborn. I knew that that version of myself needed to die and be reborn. I knew that that version of myself could no longer be a part of me, that my entire identity needed to die and be reborn. And so on my birthday, I kept a very sacred vow to myself, the most important vow to myself that I have ever made. And I ended the identity of chronic illness. I ended the identity of pain. I ended the identity of suffering, the identity of the healer and the person who is healing. I ended the identity of the person who needed to fix herself. I ended the relationship with pressure, with guilt. I ended the relationship with the parts of myself who I had exiled, who I had still not forgiven. I ended all attachments to timelines. I ended all attachments to techniques, to tools, and to even outcomes. I finally ended it all. And I decided right there and now, on that day, that I was going to step into my true identity, into the one that was no longer connected with suffering, illness, healing, any of that in any way, guilt, shame. And so on the day of my birthday, I took time to release and to let go of every single part of my old identity that I was still holding on to in small, even subconscious and unconscious ways. It was a spiritual surrender. It was a soul surrender. It was a nervous system surrender. It was a complete death and rebirth of myself, of peace, of power, of clarity, of purpose. I rebuilt myself and I re-stepped into joy and love and freedom and peace and ease. And in killing that old identity of myself, metaphorically, it was in letting go of that old identity that I chose life. I chose to live. I chose to be reborn. I let that identity die. I ended it, not to escape death, but so that I could finally live. And so I let go of guilt and perfection and pressure and any connection to the identity of the not healed or the healed or anything that is tangled up in any way with the old me I no longer wanted to identify with in any way. And that's when I was able to be reborn. And so, what does this mean for you? I hope it means that you don't have to go to the edge like I did. If you feel like you need to end it all, it's not because you don't want to live, it's because you don't want to suffer. It's because you can't hold the suffering. You can't face the suffering. I never not wanted to live. I only wanted to escape the suffering. I had to die many times along my journey, many times in order to get to the final point of a full identity rebirth. It was a slow process along the way, spiritually dying many times throughout my journey, emotionally dying many times throughout my journey, rising up, This was all part of a process that took me to a date in which I was completely and utterly ready to be reborn. And I want to let you know that you will get there too. You will get there. And when you do, choosing to kill the old identity so that you can live, so that you can be free here in this world, is the most important gift that you will ever give yourself. So I didn't die at 50, but something significant, something permanent inside of me did. And because it did, I am now free to live. And so you don't need to make it to a date. I never needed to make it to a date. I always just needed to let go of the version of me that was holding on to the suffering, that was in resistance to the suffering, that couldn't sit with the suffering. I always just needed to let go of the version of me who was trying to die. And so on my 50th birthday, I made a new vow. And that vow is that I will never again be the version of me who thinks that I can't do it, who thinks that I'm not enough, who thinks that it's too hard, who thinks that it's too much. And I will never again be the kind of person who needs an escape plan. And instead, I will hold all of my power and choose the life I want to live, who I want to be. And with all of the power inside me, I will move towards what it is that I want and completely let go of anything that no longer serves me or the person that I truly am. Because I am healed, I am whole, and I am here. And you are too. And so today I challenge you to ask yourself what version of yourself you're ready to let go of. What version of yourself you're truly ready to end so that you can begin again. And if you're still in that place between death and rebirth, just hold on. And I promise the day will come when you will begin again too. And so I want to thank you for spending your valuable time with me today. And I want to thank you for letting me share this intimate, vulnerable story that I wasn't sure if I was going to share or not. But I think it's important for you to know. And I think it's important for myself to speak it so that I can finally be free of it. And if you're in complete struggle and complete suffering and need a free program or a free resource and a starting place, then go sign up for my free program here. Because I know that you can heal. I never want you to give up. And this resource is going to help you as a starting point. I am sending you all my love, and I will see you in the next video.